Alright, welcome back to a new TouchDesigner tutorial. And in this one, we are gonna look at the trace pop, which basically enables us to convert a 2D image into 3D pop space. Yeah, we're gonna do a bit of layouting here. So we got the original, we got a composite, and we got the traced output. I'm just gonna show you with a few different examples. So we got this woman doing something. Posing, and this footwork dancer. So right now it's as you can see, it's kind of like based on movement. So this is not something that we have to do, but I'm going to show you that mainly now in this tutorial, and I'm going to show you a few different examples. So 3 different kind of styles that you can get, or even more actually, that you can achieve with this technique. And without further ado, let's get started. So I'm gonna delete everything apart from this stuff, which is 3 different videos: bird, woman, and dancer. And on this dancer, I just added a keyboard and connected that to Q and set a Q point, because in the beginning he's walking in there. I just want to be able to see the main part. Okay, so I'm just gonna use the bird as an example for now, and I'm gonna call this original. And then I'm going to add another null to this and call this top input. And I'm just going to show you the trace pop right away. So I'm going to right click here, pop, and then trace. And then that is going to put that here automatically. If you just add a trace like this, then you would have to drag this or write it in here. Okay, so the trace pop is just kind of like converting whatever input is coming in here based on the channel here into lines. So these are actually like, it looks flat, but they're actually in 3D space, right? We're in pops here. And then we have different ways of how to render this. And then based on this threshold, we can determine like what part of the image basically gets used, right? So this would be the basic way of doing things. So just using straight up the image and then like changing the parameters here. But what I'm interested in for this example is actually just writing or sort of adding a trace wherever it's moving. So there's a classic component to do that. So I'm pressing Control B to open the palette tools, and then if we go down all the way here, we've got optical flow. That is one nice way to do this. So I'm just going to put that in here. On my optical flow, I'm going to change the force to something high, like 50. And maybe add a bit of a threshold, 0.05. Like, you don't have to. Actually, it kind of looks better without it. But yeah, we can come back to that later. And if I add that in here now, you can see that it kind of only draws the bird into 3D space, which is really nice. Or, I mean, right now it's the bird, but it could also be the dancer, right? And you can see it's kind of flickery, which I don't like. So what I like to do to get rid of that flicker is to add a bit of a feedback here. So first off, I'm going to change this to monochrome from monotop. And then I'm going to add a feedback top here and a level. So just typical feedback system, add a composite, and then put that back into here, add, and I'm going to use my keyboard in to pulse that. So you might have to add that yourself. Hit 1 on my keyboard, and let's just drag this back on here. On my level, I'm going to go down with my opacity to 0.95. And now it's way less flickery. It's like nice and smooth. So actually, I'm going to right click and reset all parameters. Let me just put that on here. So we get the default. And then this is what it looks like. Pretty cool. Let's quickly set up the render network before we go on. So I'm going to right click on the output here and add a geometry. As always, I don't know how many times I've done this. Let's add a camera. Let's add a line. Put that on here. Par material. I'm going to change my width and width near and far both to 2. On my camera, I'm going to change my view to orthographic and the ortho width to 1, and that's going to enable us to perfectly align this with the original image. And also there's no perspective distortion, which in this case is exactly what we like. I'm going to hide the viewers here. I'm going to add a render, and the resolution of the render, it doesn't have to be super high. but it should be the same aspect ratio as the original. So this is a 16:9, actually really low res. I'm gonna go back to my bird, but this is like, yeah, 16:9. So I'm just gonna be working with this. Then I'm gonna add a transform to this because I want to have a black background. So one comp over background color on. I'm gonna add a null to this, and let's just call this traced. Then what I'm gonna do is I wanna composite this with the original. So I'm just gonna add a comp from the render. So before we add a black background, I'm gonna change this to over and just input my original into here. And now we got the lines on top of that bird, which already looks pretty cool. And again, I'm gonna add a null and call this composited. And then I'm gonna add a layout just like this and just type in the names here. So I'm gonna first type in original, which is what I called this null, right? Then I want to composite it, so I just type that afterwards. And then after that, I just type in traced. So the order of what you write here is gonna determine the order of the layout. So I'm just gonna change this to 1080 by 1920. So it's vertical and custom resolution, output aspect resolution. And then on my layout, I want this to be grid rows and max columns 1. And then we might want to go to transform, just scale it down a bit so we have a bit of a margin between them. And also on my layout, I might want to add some black background again. I'm going to add a null, call this BG, and show that in the background. And if I have display backdrop tops off and like here select top viewer, then it's going to be showing there. So that's nice and clean. So let's look at a few different trace examples, which is the heart of this tutorial, really. So first one, I'm gonna you can already go with the default values. It's already pretty cool. I'm gonna go down with the resolution. This is really like has a huge impact, both on the look, of course, as you can see, but also on the performance, right? Because if I go up all the way to, I don't know, maybe 0.5, then we got almost 90,000 points. And then if I go all the way down to whatever this is, 0.043, we got 800 points. So if this is very slow, then you shouldn't ever go too high with this. I mean, depending on your computer also, or rather, better said, like if this is slowing down, then you might want to go down with the resolution. I'm gonna go all the way down to 0.05, and I want the threshold. I'm gonna change this to this mode and then change this to 0.05 as well. And I'm going to turn on smooth edge distance and go up all the way to maybe 0.24. So it's much smoother. You can even go higher. So at some point it's going to be very abstract, right? So right now it's just like a circle or ellipse around the bird, which is kind of cool as well. It's very graphical, but yeah, maybe I want it to be resembling the bird a bit more. So the more I kind of like, the higher the resolution and the lower the smoothing, the more it's going to really resemble the bird. I also want to turn this off and then make this like a bit brighter. I could even go up with the width. I think this is fine. So that's the first example. One thing I also want to show you, which is really fun, is adding a triangulate pop. And that is gonna kind of like connect all these points with lines. So this looks even more like a kind of sketch on top. And if this is like hiding the thing too much, you can go to the line material, turn on blending, and then we could go down with the alpha a bit. So it kind of just is less visible. So yeah, triangulate pop is nice as well. If you want all these points to be distributed more evenly, you can do line resample, change it to distance between points, and then go very low. So now you can see like here it's kind of more random, and here they're distributed more evenly. So this is kind of like connecting these is a pretty like working in combination with these two pops is really nice. So I'm going to bypass that and I'm going to add a switch here. And let me move this all a bit more to the left. And I'm going to add another trace. So I'm just going to again right click here and then add a trace. I'm going to use this instead. No, I guess a second input and then index 1. And on my second trace, I'm going to change the resolution to 0.05 again, very low, or maybe 0.06, something like that. And then I'm gonna go up with the threshold to 0.65 and change this again to smaller equal. And again, we could add a triangulate here. Also, by the way, like if I go back here, you can change this to convex and concave. So this is, again, this is a different look. And same here, if we, again, change the index, we can change this to convex or convex and concave. And you can change the values here as well. But really mainly what's interesting here, again, is playing kind of with the resolution, right? Like the higher the resolution, the more points, obviously. And then that also means more lines. So if we just have lines instead of line strips on our trace, we can add a skin pop afterwards. And that really nicely connects those as well. It's similar to the triangulate, but not the same. So if I were to maybe add this woman in here, you can really nicely see this. So without skin and with skin, I think that looks really cool as well. And then the third thing I want to show you. So again, I'm going to add a trace. Right now it's very line-y. So you can make it more surfacey by changing the output to brickered surface. And let me change the switch to 2. So this is now like way more detailed in a way. There's a lot more like data, basically, you could say. And it's closer to the original input. So I think that also looks pretty cool. And again, of course, you can play around with the threshold. So maybe in this case, we might want to go up a bit with the threshold. We could go down with the resolution. Again, that's going to have a huge impact on what this looks like. I think that's pretty interesting as well. So maybe let's go down with the resolution and again, turn the skin on. And then, yeah, you get that kind of look. Might want to add this dancer and see what that's like. So right now, like it kind of detects movement on the side. If you notice it picks up too much, we can also add some threshold here, like 0.05. So now it's not going to pick up those things on the sides, but really just where the main movement is happening. So this threshold on the optical flow is kind of responsible for that. One more thing I'm going to show you. If I middle mouse click here, I'm just going to add an extrude. Because right now we're just working with lines, but you can technically also make this like a proper 3D structure. So I'm not going to render this, but technically you can use a PBR or some normal render setup without lines to render this. You might want to add a transform afterwards and align Z origin, so it's nicely centered in the 0. So this could be a way on how to use the trace pop as well. So again, we don't have to use this whole like optical flow setup. We could bypass that, but then especially in this example, like it doesn't actually like look that great. But for example, here we can see, okay, the dancer is the darkest. So maybe what I could do is add a level and invert this, and then maybe go down with the gamma, and then we get a pretty cool look as well. And again, like we're in 3D space. And that's about it. Feel free to tag me when you share your different experiments with this. I'm very curious to see different outputs. I'm sure you can do way more with this, but this was a basic overview. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you on the next one.